Have you noticed how technology is continuing to encroach and in some ways impact our lives? Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stockham. Today's guest, Caitlin Harries, is an expert, and you're going to want to stay all the way through to hear what she has to say about all of the pieces of technology. Welcome to Simply Sarah. We're going to bring Caitlin right in. Caitlin, it is such a joy to see you today. I have had the privilege of walking beside you for a number of years, and I'm just super excited about all that you're going to be sharing today. You are an expert in technology, along with other things, and have been able to work from home for close to a decade, and would just love to hear your story about how you got to this place.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. I'm happy to be here. So I've been in e-commerce for almost 12 years now, and uh, as you can imagine, it never sleeps. Being within technology and marketing, it's been a wonderful industry to be in. I've worked for small brands and large brands. I've both been in-house as well as with what I do right now. I do my own consulting. I run my own business. And that was always what I wanted to do, was ultimately work for myself and have the autonomy and work from home and work and do wherever I need to be. I can be virtual. So it's been a ride, but I'm pleased to say now that I can work from home and I can have my baby at home and I can live anywhere, and it creates so much space for me in how I blend my personal and professional lives as I have embarked on this new journey into motherhood. And technology we love it, and we also need to find ways to live in harmony with it. So that's something that we need to focus on every day. And having worked in this industry and in this space, it's in my everyday. So I like to share some wisdom and at least get people thinking about how we live better with technology.
Caitlin, let's just jump right in. What are some things that you have discovered, because it is every day? There's not a day that goes by that I don't touch my phone at some level. It's my calendar. It's a phone. It's a place that I can look up and do research. It's a place that I can connect in with other people on different platforms. It's what people are watching this show on. So technology is helping us move our lives in so many incredible, beautiful, wonderful ways. And yet you're saying that there's also a part of it where we need to be paying attention every single day. I would love for you to share some of the gifts that you come with, some of those ideas, those thoughts that you have about doing that, about having better balance and flow in our lives.
Yes, I think so much of it comes around having the awareness and setting those boundaries. If you're aware that you're touching your phone all of the time, what are you actually doing? Is it purposeful? Using your phone as a tool is what it was meant to do. But now it's been a crutch for people who are awkward in social situations. You're bored. You don't want to think what's going on in your mind. You don't want to feel the emotions that you should be feeling. And so it's, in a lot of ways, it's an escape route. And as a marketer, of brands, and, my objective is always to stay at top of mind to the consumer. And so you always want to have this strategy of being consistent and frequent. So you're always on. Within that, how do you remain in front of someone while adding value instead of always asking for the sale? In e-commerce, you're always looking for the sale. You're selling products or services. That's where the value of living within technology as a value add or a tool, utilizing it for that purpose rather than it being that crutch, and letting it absorb you is really where the rabbit hole kind of comes into play. So I really believe in setting those boundaries and really reflecting on how you're using your tools. Getting out of, setting the boundaries of, if you have a home office, you set a time where you are walking away. within my experience, I've worked remotely full time since 2016. So before the pandemic, before COVID, everyone came into my world and what home work life was, and that balance and that pull and tug. But you do need to set that boundary of, I need to step away from this. You don't have a commute. You don't have things to come down from your day. You need to create those spaces. And whether it's home office or even your phone, maybe setting an objective of, I'm going to live without my phone every day for an hour. You can set it and forget it and not do anything. Figure out how you're spending that time in that hour. You might be doing something that you've been putting off, or you thought about, or you might be having those thoughts that are really intuitive that gives you more positive reinforcement or ideas on ways to spend your time better.
Wow, I really appreciate that. I was getting lost in my thoughts in terms of how I choose to spend that hour, what I do with that. And I know that in our relocation, there's been chunks of time that I've been out gardening and that I've left my phone inside, in part because I haven't figured out how to carry it with me when I'm doing different things, and I can figure that out pretty easily. But it's been so nice to be able to put it inside. And that's been part of as a teacher, in the summertime, I wasn't as attached to my phone. When I'm in front of a classroom, I was using it for absolutely everything, from attendance to the different lessons that we were using. Everything was connected to my phone because I was a mobile teacher. And so coming into the summertime, I would definitely naturally have these spaces of, oh, it feels good to put this down just for a minute. And then as we really relocated over the summer, I began to find that I could leave it down for periods of time and then realize that I wasn't actually checking it as often as I could be. And so that became another internal conversation for me. And I know that you have relocated a number of times since you've been working from home. And so what are some pieces that you have done in those relocations to make sure that you have time to unpack, but that you're also at your computer doing the things that you need to be doing to keep the business going?
Yeah, I always usually build a framework of prioritization. I'm a very organized, analytical type of person, as you know. But as long as I set my priorities, I know where my mind and my focus and attention needs to be. Anything outside of that. So when we're talking about encroaching technology, it's not that just the technology is the vessel for people coming in. So if I'm getting messages from my team across states or even in Canada, currently I have a client in Canada, and I'm dealing with 3 different time zones. I'm getting messages from them all day, all night. I mean, I even have someone in the Philippines, and I can put that on myself and think I always have to be available, always have to be on. Yes, in my industry, there is always that feeling of being available. In my 20s, that is what consumed me, but I was also focused on really climbing that ladder to get to where I am. But now I've taken, all of my experience and what that consumption does to you in your mind and that stress and anxiety, and you got to compartmentalize it and say, is this on my time frame? Is this important to me? Is this aligned with my priorities? Because if you let everyone in, you're just adhering to their priorities, their timeline, and then nothing gets done. So you have to protect your time. You have to protect what you allow in. And I know we do that energetically, but from a technology standpoint, making sure you utilize the do not disturb on your phone. I use that all the time. Silence notifications. Because I want to get in that deep work where I want to focus on something, or you cut off as much as you can with the notifications. I feel like is a really good tool as well.
Yes, and I noticed the number of spams, even though I'm on a do not call list. Somehow, there's a workaround somehow, and so absolutely being able to put it on do not disturb, and then having set times to come back and check on that. I know that for myself also that I don't have notifications on my laptop. I may have a few on my phone. And yes, I learned the hard way as a mom to set up my phone at night so that people have to call in a couple different times if they're on the favorites list to be able to get through, but that they actually can get through to me in the evening. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, not once, but twice. When my daughter was in college, she called needing help, and I was unavailable because I had my phone turned off or in the other room, and trying to work on the deep sleep part of it. That was great, but that didn't sit well. And yes, she had someone else that she could reach out to and did, and got a hold of them consistently. But that really just became my calling of waking up and saying, okay, in this space of being a mom to an adult, with technology, I've got to figure out a way that works for me to be able to sleep well, but also be able to have people get a hold of me. I know that you have a little one, and what are you doing when you spend time with her, when you invest in that playtime, the feeding time, all the life experiences, right? How do you handle having a phone or technology, and then also, I don't know if you wear a watch or not, but the technology, and be fully present with her?
Yeah, so, I thought about this throughout my pregnancy, and, there's so much pressure and expectations on females who are journeying into motherhood and doing it all. And I really moved away from that and thought to myself, as long as I'm showing up consistently and like putting whatever current role. So I'm not just a worker. I'm not just a wife. Now I'm adding a mother into the mix. I can't do all those things all the time. So it's really, again, kind of working at a framework, compartmentalizing. I'm very blessed that I do have help a couple of days a week that is coming in to help with her. So I have that block of time for my worker role, my worker hat. And so I really put my phone away as best I can, because I've also set the expectation with my team. I am available, actively available during these times of the day. And if I don't get to anything, I will answer it again at night after the baby goes down or the following day. So I set that expectation. So I'm not always feeling like I'm playing catch up, or I'm behind, or I'm not doing what I should be doing. So my time with her is dedicated. I just never want her to feel that like my phone is more important to her and that she needs to earn my attention. She doesn't know it now. She won't know it until she's a young adult or even adult, that a work matter is urgent. I could get away with that when my career consumed me in my 20s and that's all I had, but I can't do that anymore. So I've had to really shift what my career and my career role is, while still providing value, while still getting that purpose part of me, because I am career driven. I love my work. I love it. But I also love being a mother. So it's a matter of just having that attention and shifting kind of in those hats, and then being able to lay down at night and say, okay, how is my worker role today? Do I feel confident that I put value in and I did a good effort? Did I give my daughter my undivided attention? And I got all those moments, all those little moments with her. And I laid her down to bed, and I can lay down and feel satisfied with what I did. I mean, the biggest thing of being a new parent is you come to realize time in seconds. It's not days, it's not hours, it's in seconds. Anytime that you open your phone when you're sitting with your child, that second they could be doing something new. They could be realizing you're not paying attention to them, and then that's lost. You never get that back. So I'm really aware of that. I don't want to miss a second.
Yeah. Yes. Do you think, Caitlin, that your career role or career goals have changed now that you have a child?
No, because I've always been very career driven, and I actually learn a lot even with the client that I am. Oh, it is in the health and wellness space. So it's not only serving me, but it's serving my intentions with how I raise her around technology.
Yes.
And screen time, how I interact with my screens and my digital products around her. I don't want her to, kind of be that deer in headlights. Oh, there's a screen, there's a screen, there's a screen. I want her to have more of an organic, realistic upbringing the best of my ability. Look, again, tech is a tool. There will be a screen involved at some point when needed, but I don't want it to just be here, here, here. So it hasn't really changed, but there have been things as I've become a mother and being very intentional that I do have some business ideas that I want to explore on my own. And I've had this intuition, this deep desire, and whether I dream about it or it just keeps popping up, that my mid-late 30s, I feel like I'm going to become a business owner. I don't know what that is, but that's something that keeps coming up to me and bubbling up. And therefore, I also see it on her end. I do want to see her to see that this strong, independent mother, female leader in her life, that she's not, stuck into these roles, that it's so much more fluid. You don't have to be one or the other. You can be a multi-passionate, which is what I call myself. I like to dabble in a lot of things. I like to try new things, and I want her to have that same desire.
Yes. And Caitlin, I love that you are multi-passionate, because there are so many things that you're good at, and there are things that you desire to move into and work on. And I love that you are noticing that in the future that there's also pieces that are going to, like a tree, new branches coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
New areas, new thoughts, but all of those things coming authentically from who you are, setting these boundaries in. Did you find that once you set the boundaries about these are the hours that I'm going to work, these are the times where I'm actively available, that your billables increased by that, or was that something that you noticed stayed about the same?
It's about the same. I think what I've worked so hard to do, it's not just being independent and free from a corporate environment, is establishing trust and autonomy within my clients. If they know, no matter what, if it's odd hours or what, the work's getting done. And that's what I instill into anybody that I hire or that I work with. As long as the work's getting done and it's in a timely manner and it's quality work, the rest doesn't matter. And I think that's what's really been difficult after COVID for a lot of people is productivity is up, but at the same time, I think corporations are a little bit hesitant, like, oh, well, if we're not watching them or we're not monitoring them, what are they doing? It's very old school and traditional in thinking, which I feel like is stifling in the workforce these days. So most of the people that I work with are similar to me, that have worked autonomously for however many years. So we all play in the same type of fluid environment around trust and having those strong relationships and not nickel and diming billables and things like that.
I also believe that we attract the type of clients that we want, and that we do that by setting intentionally the clients that we want, but also, if you're going to journal it out, turn the page and write the kind of client that you don't want. And maybe you start with the kind of client that you don't want to start with, because for some people that's easier to do than, I don't want that type of client. And then to turn the page and write, I want this type of client. Mm-hmm. And in the space of doing that, you have already created people who are going to not only be giving your name to other people and saying, hey, come work with Caitlin, but are also going to be people who are going to be understanding that the work will be quality, it will be done in a timely manner, but to give you the freedom to be able to do that when it needs to get done into your world as well. So I think that's such a huge piece of just awareness that you just carry with you, no matter where you are. When you think about the type of clients that you want, have there been certain things that you have done to seek clients? Because you are in a tech environment. I'm going to guess that you have clients that you've never met in person, that you have successfully worked with and worked for. Are there things that trade secrets, if you will, that you're willing to share with us about different ways that people can be reaching out to people? You talked about being consistent. You talked about, giving value. Are there other things that you have done when you have been seeking new clients?
I usually try and find a client, a product, or a service that is relatable and resonates with me as a person, that, or even professionally, that I've had experience with before, because that already is a value add. I have experience in that space.
I love that.
You know, I have worked in some food, you know, CPG, consumer packaged goods around, you know, health bars and nut bars and things like that, that you're going to find in every store because they're a little bit more expensive, but because they produce with quality ingredients and their brand story is really good. They're a small company, you know, kind of a mom and pop startup. I always like to see the small, you know, the underdog come up and win against the big dogs. So it usually has to align with me at some level, that I will strive to do my best work rather than to just sell another product. That's just never been me. Early on in my career, as I was gaining experience, I was getting in e-commerce and customer acquisition through digital marketing. And, you know, I really learned that you know, I worked for retail brands and, you know, premium denim. And as fun as that was, there was something missing. And that was that gut feeling of, I want to be able to be excited to tell my friends and family about my clients and the product that I'm working with, because it is doing good. It is improving something within people's lives. And so that's usually what I look for. And then back to your question earlier, is so much of it about successful clients and finding the right ones is setting expectations and seeking clarity. I think so much, there's a lot of assumptions that people have. Look, you know, again, if we go back to technology, text messages, emails, they're always received in probably the worst tone that you can assume. So getting on the phone, getting on the Zoom, having a face-to-face to see interactions if you can't meet them in person, seeking clarity on what they're really after to make sure that what you can offer is aligned with their expectations. And if it's not, then you can have that discussion and maybe it doesn't work, or you know, if you do move forward, you're off on the right path because you're aligned on what the services are going to be and what they can expect to receive.
Yes. And I really appreciate that you're speaking specifically about that, because Caitlin, I believe that if there's at least some overlap between what the person is offering, what the person is wanting, if there's some overlap, that you can find a way forward when things get a little bit sticky, if they do. But if there isn't any overlap from the very, very beginning, then there isn't any space to be able to say, wait, these are areas that have been helpful or successful, and let's build on that as well. So I really appreciate you going, you know, circling back on that. In the space of you getting ready to do all the different things that you did, when you finished high school, then did you know that you were going to go to college and that you were going to get all of the degrees and the different things to do this? Or did you just say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do? You put a shingle up and that you began that process of learning it?
So my path to college, I knew I was going to college. I actually was a competitive athlete and chose not to go to school as a competitive athlete. So I stayed local. I went to Cal Poly Pomona, and I love communication. I'm a very social, outgoing person. So I went into communications with an emphasis in public relations. And as a senior, you need to do an internship. I did an internship with a daily soap opera, and that was interesting and eye-opening. It was an agency environment, and right then I knew I was not meant for the agency. So then I started looking at going in-house with a brand. I interviewed with some brands, and I actually got hired with a now larger jewelry company out of Laguna Beach. And they were looking for a PR person as well as a marketing person, but they needed a marketing person more. I had also had an internship at Cal Poly as a marketing intern. I wanted to get my foot in the door. So I said, sign me up. Let's get in there. And it was the best thing ever, because I was thrown in on the ground within, you know, customer acquisition and Facebook advertising, email marketing, influencer marketing. This was right when blog influencers were really starting to come up. So it was a really good entry point for me. And so I just knew real quickly, this is where I need to be, and it's only going to grow. And still it's continuing to evolve. And as I feel I'm a lifelong learner, this industry has given me that passion and that value of always something coming around. Like right now it's AI, utilizing and finding out what ChatGPT can do for us as a business, create efficiencies, as well as providing a better customer experience through our website, the client's website. Understanding the tools, how to use them, and how they can bring value with the right application.
And have you found at this point in your research and working with ChatGPT, have you found it to be helpful?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But there is, the digital driven world that we live in, it also, I'll back into this a little bit. It does open up some issues as far as like removing our own intuition in our daily lives, because, we've been groomed to seek external tools, external validation, confirmation. Like we've forgotten how to look inward and find the answer for ourselves, whether that's a decision or what's right for us, but more of what's right or wrong, or what does this mean? I feel like the critical thinking aspect of our lives, whether it's in business or personal, has taken a back seat. And you can see that with ChatGPT. Students are writing papers through ChatGPT. They're not writing papers. They're not thinking critically and putting their thoughts into words to then be reviewed and be graded. They're just looking for an easy way out and using ChatGPT. So what is that actually doing for them? It's going to affect, the workforce. It's going to affect how people vote, how people make decisions, financial decisions. I mean, we can go the domino effect of people relying on those external sources, but it also has its great use cases.
I just think that it possibly is a case in point. Completely different technology, old technology, calculator. My mom does all of her own checkbook, does it by hand, right? She's 88 years old, does it by hand, and then goes back and checks it to make sure that she has it correct and makes all the numbers in every single to the penny every single month. But she's using her own brain to make sure. And watching her as she has been processing some things out loud, she's using her brain. And then after she's gotten to the answer that she wants, then she'll go and check on things. And I think that could be one of the reasons, or one of the things that we also choose to do with ChatGPT, is that we set up that this is what our expectation, this is what we're doing, this is how we creatively are looking at using our intuition to move forward with things, and then potentially coming in and using support, technology support, to maybe flourish it, or to put a little bit more fertilizer, so to speak, into the whole thing to have it move forward. But I do think that us starting with us, the creativity part, I think that that's one of the things that makes us so amazingly unique, is to be able to use who we are in a creative capacity. And then, yes, use tools around to make that happen. If you're a woodworker, use the tools that you have as a woodworker. But you don't just look at the tools and say, build something for me. You start with the idea, the concept of what you want to be building at that point. It was said that a number of people looked at the marble that became David, that Michelangelo made into David. A number of people looked at that and they just said, I don't see it. I don't see what it could be. So it sat there for decades until he came along and he said, I see it. I see what needs to come out of this, what needs to be removed in order for this statue to be there. Mm-hmm. And so again, whole space of creativity. And I love that story of that, of it's what's being removed, and so that the beautiful piece can show up. And so I think also in our life with technology, what technology can we keep that really helps us to move forward on things, and what things need to be limited or possibly even removed, so that more of who we are can show up in a way that's authentic and good and creative and positive. I love the story that you talked about, working on some different projects, knowing that would give you street cred. You didn't use those words, those were mine. But in doing that, would you recommend that other people do that as well?
Yes, absolutely. I think it comes down to the quality of work that you put out, and it's not going to just feel like work. I think burnout is a big health issue that is not being discussed at the level that it is. You know, I recently spoke with a neurologist, and the amount of brain frequencies that he's seen that are affected around stress and burnout, and just how our brains are firing a little bit differently. I feel like it's so hard to continue down that path day in and day out. One, to feel alive and to feel healthy and to feel like you do have that balance of you're putting the work in, and the money's coming in, but what is that all for if you're exhausted and you're not able to enjoy it? And so it makes it so much easier when you're working on purposeful work, and it doesn't feel like that grind. And I've done it. I mean, I've done it at an agency, I've done it in brands, and you get that feeling where you're doing it all for somebody else. But even though I am doing it for somebody else, I'm also doing it for me because I get so much value out of it. And I think that's where there's a lot of that lacking right now. But they're out there. There's a lot of opportunities out there to find that, and anywhere, exchanging product for services, services for services, exchanging, someone's experience and knowledge to get that back. I mean, I feel like there's so much of that lost too, that there's a pay to play expectation with everything. And we've lost our way in that aspect.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, Caitlin, because I know that when I started my own Reiki business in person, way over a decade ago, I was encouraged to go reach out to somebody in town that I didn't know super well. But I was encouraged to reach out. And when I did, she said, I love doing this. She loves helping people who are new entrepreneurs come into the business, any kind of business, whether it happens to be services or product, and helping them think through some of the pieces. And she teaches at a local, it's Citrus College. They bring her in as a guest speaker to do exactly the same kind of thing as well, to talk to people who are going to be coming into the industry, perhaps owning their own salon, perhaps coming in as estheticians, wherever it happens to be in that space. And she loves, it's part of her gift, is being able to help other people. But if you don't start asking questions or start seeing how big the trampoline is that can support, then you have no idea that it's actually there, and that fabric is there to help support when great things happen, when hard things happen, but that community, even though you're working online, having that space of a community, how critical that happens to be. You had talked a little bit about a business that was looking for marketing and for PR. What is the difference between the two of those?
Yeah, so public relations is more around how you interact with the public, sharing information, and getting your word out there, or your brand into certain verticals and channels that are needed. And then marketing is more around acquiring customers specifically. So how are you going out and finding the right people? And in this digital age, there's a lot of granularity that you can locate these people, whether it's through Facebook or YouTube or Google. There's so many verticals, and they're constantly evolving, they're constantly changing as far as getting in front of people and then driving them down into, making a purchase and creating them as a customer. And then there's that whole other side, which is on the retention side, around how to keep that customer and how to repeat that customer. And that is a lot about adding value and not just saying, hey, buy more product, but what can we do to add value and stay in front of you, is what I described earlier, with something that is educating or informative, or that that drives a positive action from them. So marketing is all encompassing of the front, the beginning to the end, and extending from it to retain those customers. And PR is more about really crafting a message specific to what your objective is and getting that out into, the media and the channels that you need to, whether it's a campaign or something new, research, anything like that.
And with all these new different platforms coming along and things being renamed and all the rest of that, what are the tried and true ones that you enjoy working with the most, or that you have found the most bang for your buck, so to speak?
Facebook has been a wonderful channel. It's constantly evolving. The algorithm continues to change, so you're always kind of kept on your toes, but it learns the fastest. It's the most efficient as far as dollars and cents and spend go. And then the granularity of the targeting. So you can just cast a very wide net, or you can get very granular, whether it's geographically based, interest based, which has changed a lot. 8 years ago, if you liked, if you watched Days of Our Lives soap opera or something, I could have targeted you because you followed Days of Our Lives Facebook page. That's changed, but it's more around, there's a lot of demographic information that's available. So what's exciting for me is the tools that you can reach those people on more of a one-to-one level and not a billboard. One, it's not efficient for spending your marketing dollars, but two, my goal is to always, again, provide that value. And I'm constantly thinking as the marketer, as well as the customer or the person that's seeing that ad, and what's going to resonate with them the most, that is most relatable to them. I don't want to send a McDonald's advertisement to someone that is a health and fitness guru. That just doesn't make any sense. And I know that's a crazy example, but I want to match the message with the person as best I can. So they are like, even though I might not want that ad in front of me, it makes sense why it's there. And I appreciate the level of effort to get that right one in front of me.
Yes. Yeah. And I agree with you. Just because I choose to shop or not shop, that's a side thing. But the amount of effort and energy it takes going through big data to figure out what it is that might be something that might be helpful for me, having that show up on my Instagram, for example, I do appreciate the work, because there's a human element that happens along with that process as well. It's not just algorithms and that there are people who are still touching and looking and finding some of the pieces that go along with it. There's still some intuition that goes along with that as well. In that process,
definitely an art. That's what I like about it too. There's an art to it.
Definitely.
Messages and storytelling. That's where a lot of marketing has gone from. It's just, instead of just product, it's really around creating and crafting very good stories and messages that aren't just trying to push a sale.
Yes.
Which is what I find the most fascinating.
And I think that stories are so helpful also because they're one of the first things that we connect in with other people with. And when you listen to the story of your family, you're connecting in these very different people, for me, very, very different people from very, very different backgrounds. And yet this is our family tree. And the only way to understand that, besides just seeing it on paper, is to be able to start hearing some of the stories. How do these pieces work together? How do these people meet? What happened in these spaces? And we don't know all the stories. And we don't know everybody's story. And so when we brush up against somebody and they may be having a not very good day and we don't know why, we don't know their story to sometimes be able to figure out what it is that has caused their day to not be as good. On the other hand, in marketing and also in PR, there's the overarching stories that can be told that seem to pull more people into the conversation as well. Those that are giving hope, those that are giving encouragement. Yes, looking at things that are difficult, but then shining a light on a path forward with that can make such a huge difference as well.
Yeah, I think that's where the technology has hindered us from finding finding that connection with people in the community. It's funny you say that because I make and this isn't just because, I live and operate a little isolated at home, but I've, over the course of the last few years, I've made a conscious effort when I go out in public to make eye contact with people and say hello or embrace them in some way and see what they do back, especially in airports, restaurants, shopping, where I want that connection. And the hellos and the highs, or just the embrace of community, is something that I find that's being lost right now, but that I'm so determined to keep. And if I have to say hello to everybody that I see, I'm going to do it.
And I think that part of that also is you're right about community, is the space of looking for how do we connect back in? Because I know that for myself, when I feel overwhelmed or I'm tired or I have a list of things that I'm trying to get done, that my eyes will typically go down just because I'm trying to get stuff done. And rather than being present in the moment, and I'm not saying that getting stuff done is not a good place to be, because it can be really, really helpful. But also just to be aware of that there needs to be that flow, that balance to come back also and be looking people in the eye and acknowledging and smiling and saying thank you. When somebody serves me a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, that person is making effort to create and do and to bring, and just to acknowledge that, whether I'm driving through at a window or walk up or whatever that situation happens to be, but actually to look them in the eye and say thank you. And it's surprising the response that I get from that, because I would think it's just a normal thing to say, right? And some of the responses have been, it's been a while since I've heard that, and I just want to go, oh, so sorry. This is a difficult thing, being in food services, for some people. So we're going to take a quick break.
There's a reason why.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say there's a reason why people wear name tags. And if someone's serving me a drink or at a restaurant, or someone's helping me with bags at the grocery store, I look at their name tag and I call them by their name. Sometimes they're taken aback, but there's a reason why there's a name. It's not a worker, it's not an employee. There's a person behind that again, like you said, puts effort. I think that's really important.
So being new in this area, we went grocery shopping, and there are multiple places to go grocery shopping. And we had some experiences, and weren't quite sure if it was the learning of the store or whatever. And then went in one early morning, and there was somebody there who, her name is not Susie Sunshine, but she absolutely is all of that. And she noticed that I had a cleft lip, and she has a cleft palate, but you would never know because her surgeon did such a remarkable job. And so she just began this conversation, and I thought, how interesting to have somebody ask me about this. Not a typical conversation in a grocery store, one that I'm not ashamed of. It's part of my knowing that God loves me because of how it all came about, and the people the doctors and all the different things that happened to be there to support me as an early little one, and to become healthy and to be able to do all of those things in a third world country. I mean, these are not small pieces, right? And so for me, it's part of my story of knowing that God loves me, and hear her share her story and talk about it. And then we go back this next week, and she's there again. And Susie Sunshine, again, not her name, but who she is as a person. She's just super excited to share with me that she'd gotten a chance to go to hospital because somebody had called her and said, so-and-so had a baby and they had a cleft lip, and we need for you to go, and just go. And she says, oh, I got to go and hold a brand new baby. There aren't pictures of me as a baby. I said, there aren't pictures of me as a baby either, of my face. And so just again, that having this shared experience in life, completely different countries, completely different surgeons, completely different everything. I haven't held a newborn that's had a cleft lip or a cleft palate. And she was just so excited to share this with me. So now I'm like, when can I go grocery shopping in the morning, and will Susie Sunshine be there? And so it is that connection, that shares and shows up in ways for people to want to go back to do something as mundane as grocery shopping that you can order on and have it brought to the house. Why would you choose to go out in public? Well, Susie Sunshine is one of those reasons.
That's wonderful.
Just a fun little story. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Do you wonder if you can actually make a difference in a war-torn country half a world away? one man has decided a difference can be made. The Mama Lynn Center in Central Congo gives women who have been ravaged by war a chance at a new life. Women and their families, including husbands, come to learn how to move forward. The women are taught sewing skills to be able to create an income. At the end of their year-long training, each graduate receives a sewing machine. This is where your support dramatically impacts lives. $150 US provides a new hand-operated sewing machine. Here's the link and QR code to join Sarah and Michael Stockham in positively changing futures through the Mama Lynn Sewing Machine Project. We are grateful for the opportunity to share how you can make a significant difference.
It's true that a hand cranked sewing machine is super old technology. And yet technology continues to be life-changing across the board. And yes, could the ad be a little bit jazzier with music? True. But it's also being shared with people who have some hearing issues and challenges. And so we left the music off in order for them to be able to hear completely and understand. And yes, the fundraising is going on right now. This is an evergreen project. Last year, they got a grant for $10,000, matched even more than that with people who came in and donated. And we are hoping this year to be able to do all of that plus more without having the grant. But what makes a difference in changing people's lives with technology is people showing up. And so if you're interested in being part of this community that is making a difference that way, feel free to come along and join us. As we're continuing this conversation with Caitlin, I just so appreciate you sharing so many different tools and techniques and things that you use, the clocking out time just for you to be alone and play time with your daughter, the being able to put down the phone for at least an hour a day, choosing who you would like to have as clients, and really using technology to find those next best ones, knowing also that the people who have worked with you will absolutely share your information and move that on as well. Are there other tips and tools that you would like to share with us, or reiterate one of those that really is speaking to your heart?
Yeah, I think it comes down to being aware of your output. You know, and where I sit and being a consultant, there's this expectation where you need to have lots of clients and you need to bring in X amount of billables every month. I think it's really finding what works for you, and understanding what work that is. Do you want to do several part-time client work, and collectively that brings you to where you need to be, or do you want to be more dedicated? I've done both. Currently I'm pretty dedicated to one larger client because I love the work and that was what they needed and I had the time. And I still take on some project work here and there as I see fit and as I desire to, while also not overstretching myself.
Right.
Because I know that I've tied that line pretty closely over the years in several instances, especially around holiday season. That's usually the busiest season, but it's also where people need the most help. So I always try to assess where I'm going to provide the best quality services without sacrificing my own stress levels and management. And I think that's really important as you assess your work-life balance.
And as you're thinking about not just the work-life balance of your product, what you are producing, but Caitlin, there's always this learning curve that's going on with technology. And so do you build in time to be learning the latest, or do you just, as the latest comes out, just incorporate that into what you're working on, that learning curve?
It's a little bit of both. Like when AI came out, ChatGPT, pretty quickly I hopped in there just to see what it was about. I started learning it to see how I can utilize it both professionally and personally. And I also wanted to be able to speak about it if someone brought it up.
Right.
So, being a digital marketer, you need to know what's coming. Yeah. Also with knowing, you need to know where the customers are. You need to know where the people are. So for instance, YouTube is a huge channel, and that's where the majority of the video content is being absorbed. But there's also a newer channel that's called Rumble that is starting to make waves. They just started an advertising side of it. So I need to know, because people are going there, I need to know where the people are going.
Right.
I have to operate with what's working today might not work tomorrow, and I need to know where to go.
And with that, I think the really important thing is to, however you do it, to get a hold of people's email addresses. Because if everything or someone contacting them, if all the platforms go away, how do you still maintain conversations with people? And so whatever that you're doing, for anybody who's building a business, somehow have the connection for that. I know that a friend of mine, a business partner, not a business partner, but somebody that I have had her come in and lead workshop for me, for my community, had all of it go away. And she did everything that she could to try to revive it, and doesn't know exactly still to this day what happened. But she was able to painstakingly go through all the emails that she had sent out through the years and be able to grasp and bring those pieces back. I had a very similar thing happen with a very, very large company that we've mentioned today, where all of a sudden my account was gone. And even though I was doing all the things that they said, I was never able to revive that account. And yet another one showed up someplace else that had been there. And I just don't understand the connections. It doesn't matter, because it was my learning curve a year and a half ago to say absolutely forever, I must have access to people's emails. If they are that interested in what the content that I'm creating, the stuff that I'm working on, then that needs to be, and it doesn't need to be their primary email, just an email that they are checking periodically. And of course, do you want to be in the first one? Of course, yes. But I just, in that process, that was such, I'd heard it before, and until it happened in my own house, I was like, okay, this really is the learning curve that I needed to have in that whole process. And so, whatever you need to do to be able to pull those pieces in. Caitlin, I have loved this time with you. Thank you. What other tidbits do you want to share before our time is up today?
I think so much. I do want, you did have a question for me that you had written about how, something about disciplining your disappointments.
Yes.
Right. What was that question?
How do you, in business, not everything goes the way that you want it to go. How do you discipline your disappointments?
Through acceptance and vulnerability. And I have learned that through my experience, being able to accept when things go wrong or it's not right, whether it's your own fault or mishap, accept it and be vulnerable to it. Because I feel like, just not even professionally, but personally, that's a practice of mine, is if you can be vulnerable and accept it, take that, give it space to process and release it. And I feel like so much of it, the stress and the angst that you carry along with you in all facets of your life, is if you hold on to those things. And in my business, it's really been a strong lesson for me, is just to accept things for what they are. If you don't have control over it, but focus on the controllables, what you can, and be vulnerable. Because it's always much more well received if you have ego and pride aside.
Caitlin, that is absolutely so perfect. And I'm going to apply that to my life right now today. I had a conversation with somebody earlier. Let me see if I can pull up the words that she was talking about, that Dr. Let's see if I can get this fast. She talked about the 4 A's from Dr. Gabelmonte. One is that when we live in these spaces of these 4 A's, that our lives just move into a whole different area. One is agency, one is authenticity, healthy anger, and acceptance that this is the way that it is. It's not saying that we agree with it. It's not saying that we like it, but just that acceptance that this is the way that it is. And I love that piece about vulnerability, because for me, that allows me to show up completely as myself and to determine how long I want to stay disappointed and at what point will I dust off my knees and then decide to move forward.
Exactly. That's the 4 A's are way better than how I said it, but I'll add the vulnerability on top of it.
I think it's a critical piece. It's what makes us human, right? And in this whole conversation about technology, that's the one piece that we don't get from it, is the vulnerability piece of it. And so be able to come to other people and be able to share. That's why I think that communities and business that has this kind of a conversation makes such a difference, where people can see each other's faces and get the nuance that comes out, because the words are just part of the message. It's not the message.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you, Caitlin, for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule. I so appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Simply Sarah as well.
Thank you, Sarah.